The first time I met Amanda, it was in a quaint coffee shop off the university campus. I was a sophomore juggling studies and a part-time barista job. She walked in confidently, her laugh lighting up the room. When she ordered a chai latte, I accidentally handed her a cappuccino. Her warm smile and playful, "I'll let it slide," just this once melted my nerves. Over time, our paths crossed often. Our first date, a casual diner meal and a lakeside walk, was perfect. Amanda, studying criminal justice, radiated determination and humor. After graduation, we built a life together. I worked at a publishing house and she started as a paralegal. Despite our humble beginnings in a tiny apartment, we were happy, sharing dreams and laughter. Life changed with the birth of our first child. Amanda paused her career to focus on motherhood, while I climbed the corporate ladder. Sleepless nights and challenges strengthened our bond. Years later, Amanda returned to work, excelling as a paralegal team leader, balancing career and family with grace. My name's Jack Thompson, though most people call me JT. My wife, Amanda, or Mandy as I call her, has been my partner in crime for nearly 25 years. Like any couple, we've had our fair share of ups and downs, but the good times always outshine the tough moments. I've been fortunate enough to build a career as a senior director at a publishing house. After more than 2 decades in the industry, I've mastered everything from reviewing manuscripts to negotiating contracts, working with authors, and even overseeing marketing and film rights. Bringing new voices and stories into the world is a passion of mine. Amanda, at nearly 45 years old, is as striking as the day I met her. Her beauty, paired with her discipline and a commitment to healthy living, has allowed her to age gracefully. People often tell us we're a picture-perfect couple. Since our youngest started school, she's thrived at one of the top law firms in the city, managing an entire team of paralegals and excelling at every turn. But everything changed last Wednesday. I got home around 5 p.m., like I usually did, and found Amanda in the kitchen, busy preparing dinner. Lately, her cooking had taken on a new level of care, with meals that were more elaborate and thought out than ever before. I walked over and kissed the back of her head as I came in. Normally, she'd turn around to give me a proper kiss, but this time, she didn't. "No warm welcome for me today?" I teased, trying to lighten the mood. Without even glancing up, she replied, "I'm just glad you're home." Something about her tone felt off. It wasn't her usual cheerful self. It was distant, like she was avoiding even a brief moment of connection. "Everything okay?" I asked, a little concerned. "Nothing at all," she answered quickly, brushing me off. "Go get changed, and I'll have a glass of your favorite wine waiting for you when you come back." Her response felt dismissive, but I decided not to push it. I headed upstairs, hung up my suit, tossed my shirt into the laundry basket, and changed into something comfortable, a pair of Dockers and a sweatshirt. That evening's dinner wasn't anything extravagant, but it was obvious she'd put effort into it. We started with a simple salad, just lettuce and tomatoes, then moved on to roasted pork over cauliflower rice. As we toasted with glasses of wine, Amanda looked at me and said, "You know I love you, right?" There was a weight to her words that wasn't usually there. This wasn't the casual "I love you" we exchanged out of habit. Something was different. I nodded, meeting her gaze. "Of course. And I love you too." After dinner, we tidied up as we always did. I loaded the dishwasher while Amanda packed up the leftovers. She then excused herself, saying she was going upstairs to change into something more comfortable. Thinking we were in for another intimate evening, I followed her lead eagerly. When I walked into the dimly lit living room, I found Amanda stretched out on the sofa, wearing a revealing negligee that barely covered her. She was breathtaking. My pulse quickened as I knelt beside her and kissed her deeply. The energy between us was electric. My lips traced a path from hers to her bare shoulders, and soon, her negligee slipped off, leaving her exposed. Her beauty was mesmerizing, and I couldn't help but admire her, almost as if I were seeing her for the first time. "You do love me, don't you, Jack?" she whispered softly. You'll always love me, no matter what? Of course I do, I reassured her without hesitation. I quickly stripped down and joined her on the sofa, where the spark between us reignited. For the next half hour, we lost ourselves in each other. Afterward, we lay intertwined, savoring the quiet intimacy of the moment. That night, she was more passionate and present than she had been in years. It's amazing to feel this kind of spark again, I murmured, brushing a soft kiss against her lips. Our conversation turned to light-hearted compliments. I teased her, saying she could easily pass for someone in her early 30s, and she ran her hand over my stomach, joking about how well I'd kept myself in shape. Just as I was drifting off, her voice pulled me back. Jack, there's something I need to tell you, she said softly. Anything? I mumbled, half asleep. You know how much I love you, right? Her tone was barely audible, almost hesitant. Yes, Mandy, and I love you just as much, I replied, still not fully awake. There was a long pause before she continued. This Friday, I've made plans to meet someone from work for the night. Her words hung in the air, and it took a moment for them to sink in. When they did, I sat up abruptly, staring at her in disbelief. What are you saying? I asked, my voice firm. She tried to coax me back down, gently pulling at my arm, but I resisted. No, Amanda. What are you talking about? I pressed, my tone sharper now. It doesn't change how we feel about each other, she said quietly. I'll still love you, and you'll still love me. I blinked, stunned. You can't be serious. This has to be some kind of joke. She shook her head. No, Jack, it's not a joke. I have a date this Saturday with someone from the office. We're going out for dinner, maybe some dancing. After that, we'll go to his hotel room and I'll stay the night. I'll be home by late Sunday morning. Her confession hit me like a freight train. I stared at her, unable to process what I'd just heard. So, what you're really telling me is that you're planning to spend the night with another man? Don't put it like that, she said, frowning. It sounds crude, and that's not how it is. He's a good person, and I like him. That was enough to fully wake me up. I started pulling my clothes back on, the intimacy from just moments ago evaporating completely. She could see the anger boiling beneath the surface. Jack, please don't overreact, she pleaded. I still love you, and you love me. It's just this one time and then it'll be done. By next week, things will go back to normal, and you'll forget all about it. Forget about it? I said, my voice rising with disbelief. Who is this guy, Amanda? Why would you even think about throwing everything away? We've been good, happy. Why now? She tightened the sash on her robe, avoiding my eyes. His name doesn't matter, and it's not your concern. I don't want you doing anything irrational. Besides, he's bigger than you, and if you tried to do something, he could hurt you. Don't worry about that, I snapped. If I get my hands on him, it won't matter how big he is. He'll regret it. Amanda sighed, frustrated. Jack, it's just one night. He's leaving for New York on Sunday, permanently. He won't be back. Well, he better leave, I growled. Because if he doesn't, the next time he's in court, it'll be on crutches. As my initial fury began to cool, it was replaced by an overwhelming sense of loss. Amanda and I had spent more than 2 decades building a life together. She was my first and only love, the only woman I'd ever been with. Sure, I'd faced temptations over the years, but I had never acted on them. And now this, how long has this been going on? I demanded, my voice tense. It's not like that, she stammered, avoiding eye contact. We've barely even touched. Barely, I pressed, frustration spilling over. What does that even mean? Are we talking about holding hands, hugging, kissing, or something more? Her silence confirmed what I feared most. If it were something small, she would have admitted it outright. Her hesitation said everything. After what felt like an eternity, she finally spoke. He came to our firm about 6 months ago, transferred in from some top law office in New York to help with a major tax case. We worked closely together, research, building case charts, prepping court exhibits. Over time, we grew closer. About 2 months ago, he told me he had feelings for me, and that he wanted to take things further. But I didn't want it to be some cheap fling in a motel or something reckless at work. This felt different. It had to be special. He suggested I find a way to take a night for myself. She hesitated, her voice trembling. I told him I couldn't lie to you. That's when he asked if you might actually allow it. Just one night. I wasn't sure at first, but I hoped you'd understand that this is only a one-time thing. It wouldn't change anything between us. Why? I demanded, my tone harsher now. Why would you throw away everything we have? We're happy, Amanda. We love each other. We've built a life most people dream of. Our marriage, amazing kids, no financial worries, good health. Why risk all of that? She hesitated, her voice almost a whisper. Because I've only ever been with you. A friend of mine made me realize it, and then he made me see what I might be missing. I need to know what it's like, Jack. Just this once. After this, it'll be enough. It'll make me feel complete. He cares about me and I care about him. It's not some sleazy affair. Amanda, I said, my voice tight. What we have is rare. It's beautiful. You're the only woman I've ever been with, and I thought I was the only man you'd ever been with. You don't understand, she said, her voice cracking as tears welled up in her eyes. I need this. I want this. I want him. Why? I asked again, my voice softer now but no less desperate. Why would you do this? She exhaled a long, shaky breath. He's so attractive, Jack. Younger than me, but he still finds me irresistible. I don't know what it is, but I feel drawn to him in a way I can't explain. If I don't do this, I'll regret it forever. Please, let me. Just this once. After that, I'll be yours completely. I can't agree to this, I said, my voice firm. It'll destroy us, Amanda. It'll tear our marriage apart. No, it won't, she countered, shaking her head. After it's over, I'll be the best wife you've ever known. I'll take care of the house, cook for you, do the laundry, handle the shopping, everything. I'll be everything you could ever want in every way, including the bedroom. You can have me anytime, any way you want. I'll treat you like a king for the rest of our lives. I promise I'll never touch another man again. And you expect me to live with the fact that my wife was with another man? I shot back bitterly. Do you have any idea how humiliating that is? It's the ultimate betrayal. You'll have to accept it, she said, her tone unyielding. I need to do this, Jack. It won't change anything between us. I'll still love you, and you'll still love me. I stared at her, a chill creeping into my voice. So, all that extra attention and affection over the past 2 months. It wasn't because we were adjusting to life as empty nesters. You were trying to soften me up, weren't you? So I'd be more likely to go along with this crazy plan. Well, guess what, Amanda? It's not happening. She stood her ground, her posture defiant. No matter what I said, it was clear she wasn't going to budge. Her mind was made up, and nothing I said would change it. I wasn't about to beg or plead. She'd made her choice, and now she'd have to deal with the fallout. Whatever came next, it was on her. I left the living room and headed upstairs, grabbing a few things I'd need for the next day. I packed an overnight bag, gathered my toiletries, and moved into the guest room, which at least had its own small bathroom. As I carried my things, she tried to stop me. Don't do this, Jack, she said, her voice trembling. Nothing's going to change. I know you're upset now, but by Sunday afternoon, this will all be behind us. We'll go back to the way things were. I stopped in the hallway and turned to face her. My voice was calm, but my words carried weight. I'm not just upset, Amanda. If you go through with this, we'll never be the same again. Without waiting for her response, I shut the guest room door. Inside, I was left with my thoughts, and they were relentless. I ran through every possible reaction. Divorce, moving out, demanding that she leave, even confronting this guy directly. But none of those options seemed right. As much as it hurt, I couldn't imagine divorcing her. I still loved her even now. Leaving my own home wasn't an option either, and kicking her out, while tempting, felt extreme. Telling her family or our kids wouldn't solve anything. If she called it off, it had to be her decision, not something forced by outside pressure. Otherwise, she'd just find a way to hide things better next time. By Thursday evening, I realized how calculated her timing had been. Telling me so late meant I had little time to react, let alone stop her. I couldn't shake the fear that this night would change everything. What if this man gave her something I couldn't? What if she realized she liked it more than being with me? For the past 25 years, Amanda and I had shared an intimacy that felt familiar and safe. It wasn't always thrilling, but I still found her beautiful and irresistible. Whether she was in a sleek dress, lingerie, or even just wrapped in a towel. But now all of that felt fragile. As the hours passed, a desperate thought crept in. Was there still a way to stop her? If I could derail her plans, maybe I'd have a chance to remind her of what she stood to lose. That night, as I lay in bed, sleep felt like an impossible task. My mind churned, replaying every word Amanda had said. By the time I finally drifted off, I'd come up with a plan. Convincing her to change her mind directly seemed futile, but maybe her workplace could intervene. I knew the firm where Amanda worked, Harrison, Carter, and James, had strict rules about relationships between colleagues. If I approached someone in senior management, they might confront her and explain how this could jeopardize her career. The next morning, I was up before the sun. Normally, I'd make coffee for Amanda before heading out, but not today. When she walked into the kitchen, her good morning was tentative, almost hesitant. I didn't bother with pleasantries. "Don't do this," I said bluntly before grabbing my keys and heading out the door, skipping our usual goodbye kiss. The shift in my tone and behavior didn't go unnoticed. I could tell from the look on her face as I left. Later that morning, I drove downtown to the offices of Harrison, Carter, and James. The firm occupied the top floor of a sleek, modern skyscraper. The reception area exuded elegance, with its open layout, plush seating, and carefully curated artwork on the walls. A fully stocked bar sat in one corner, adding an air of luxury to the space. Behind the central desk sat Emily Stone, the firm's office manager. Over the years, I'd run into Emily at local events and company functions. While we weren't close, we were friendly enough. Emily, now in her mid-50s, carried herself with a quiet elegance. Her conservative clothing, neatly styled golden hair, and ever-present glasses gave her an air of professionalism that was hard to miss. As soon as Emily spotted me, her face lit up. "Jack, what a pleasant surprise," she said warmly, stepping out from behind her desk. She gave me a quick, friendly hug, her cheerful energy momentarily lifting the weight I'd been carrying. "Emily," I greeted her with a faint smile. "I need to speak with Mr. Harrison. It's personal and important." Her expression shifted, becoming more serious. "This is about Amanda, isn't it?" she asked perceptively. I hesitated for a beat before offering a vague response. "Maybe." With a knowing nod, Emily adjusted her glasses. "Mr. Harrison just wrapped up a meeting," she said, glancing at his schedule. "He's got about 30 minutes before his lunch with clients. I'll let him know you'd like a moment." I thanked her and took a seat in the waiting area. A few minutes later, Emily appeared with a cup of coffee in hand. "I added a splash of Bailey's," she said with a wink. "You look like you could use it." I managed a weak smile at her kindness, though my thoughts were firmly locked on the difficult conversation ahead. Before long, the intercom on her desk buzzed. Mr. Harrison's voice came through, calm and composed. "Emily, I'm back in my office. Without missing a beat, Emily responded, "Mr. Harrison, Jack Thompson is here. He'd like a few minutes of your time. It's important." After a pause, his reply came through. "If you think it's worth my time, send him in. I can spare about 5 minutes." Emily gestured for me to follow her. She led me through a set of glass doors, down a short hallway, and stopped in front of an intricately carved wooden door. She opened it and motioned for me to step inside, closing the door gently behind me. The office was spacious and meticulously arranged. Mr. Harrison stood near his massive desk, which was flanked by several chairs. On the far side of the room, a seating area with a sofa, armchairs, and a coffee table gave the space a welcoming touch. The walls were adorned with framed degrees, awards, and accolades, clear markers of his success. He walked over to greet me, extending a hand with a warm smile. "Jack, good to see you. How's life treating you? Still working in publishing?" "I'm managing," I replied, my voice lacking its usual enthusiasm. He gestured for me to take a seat. "If Emily thinks this is worth discussing, I'm all ears. What's on your mind?" I hesitated, the weight of what I was about to say pressing heavily on my chest. But I forced myself to speak. "This isn't easy for me, Mr. Harrison," I began. "Frankly, it's embarrassing." "What's going on?" he asked, his tone gentle yet curious. Taking a deep breath, I explained, "My wife, Amanda, works here. She's told me she plans to spend Saturday night with one of your associates. I've tried reasoning with her, but she's made up her mind." Mr. Harrison's sharp instincts kicked in immediately. "So, you're hoping I can step in? Perhaps have a conversation with Amanda or this associate?" "That's what I thought when I came here," I admitted. "But now, I think this is something I need to handle myself." He nodded, considering my words carefully. "You're aware, of course, that we have strict policies regarding workplace relationships, especially between colleagues in the same department. Those rules are in place to prevent conflicts of interest and protect the firm's reputation." "I understand," I said quietly. Resting a hand on my shoulder, he added, "While our policies are clear, they aren't as comprehensive as they should be. I've been meaning to make them stricter, to include definitive consequences for violations. Unfortunately, I can't implement those changes overnight, and certainly not before Saturday." I nodded, feeling a mix of frustration and resignation. "Thank you for listening, Mr. Harrison. I'm sorry to have brought this to your attention." "Don't apologize," he said kindly. "And good luck, Jack. I hope you find a way to work through this." Leaving his office, I stepped back into the reception area, where Emily sat watching me with a curious expression. "How did it go?" she asked, her tone soft. "It was a mistake bringing this here," I admitted. "I feel foolish." Emily offered me a sympathetic smile. "Don't be so hard on yourself. Sit down for a bit, take a moment. I'll grab you another coffee, or maybe something stronger." I sank into one of the plush chairs in the waiting area, running my hands over my face. My thoughts raced, filled with a mixture of frustration and defeat. I couldn't see a way to stop Amanda from following through with her plans. Overwhelmed, I leaned forward, burying my head in my hands. Emily's upbeat voice broke through my haze. "Jack, let's grab lunch, my treat." I hesitated, but the idea of escaping the chaos in my head, even briefly, was appealing. Nodding, I accepted her offer. Emily arranged for someone to cover her desk and led me to a nearby restaurant she frequented. Linking her arm with mine as we walked, she offered a comforting presence I didn't know I needed. Over iced tea, Emily leaned in gently, encouraging me to open up. I hesitated at first, unsure of how much to share, but eventually, the words began to flow. I laid it all out, everything that had been weighing on me. Emily listened intently, nodding at just the right moments, her quiet understanding keeping me steady. After we placed our orders, she chose soup and half a sandwich, while I idly picked at a Caesar salad, the conversation shifted to lighter topics. For a little while, the weight on my chest eased. Once we'd finished eating, Emily ordered coffee for both of us. We sat together in a comfortable silence, the kind that didn't demand filling. Then, out of nowhere, Emily broke the stillness with something I hadn't expected. "Did you know my late husband was a fighter pilot?" I blinked, caught off guard. "I knew you'd lost your husband," I replied carefully, "but I didn't realize he was a pilot." Her expression softened as she nodded. "Joe was my hero. We got married right after he graduated from the Air Force Academy. He flew A-10s, those warthogs they're famous for. He served 2 tours in the Middle East before he was tragically killed in a training accident." I sat quietly, letting her words sink in, as she shared more about his life. She spoke about his service with pride, recounting the honors he'd earned: the Silver Star, the Distinguished Flying Cross, and 2 Bronze Stars. Her voice trembled just a little as she talked, but there was strength behind her words, a deep respect for the man he had been. "Joe used to talk to me about air combat strategies," she continued, her voice steadying. "One tactic always stuck with me. When facing a single enemy fighter, a 2-plane formation would split up. The enemy pilot had to make a choice: go after one and leave the other free to attack, or try to target both and fail. Either way, the enemy always lost." Her story fascinated me, though I wasn't quite sure where she was going with it. "Are you trying to make a point about Amanda's plans tonight?" I asked, curiosity creeping into my voice. Emily's lips curved into a knowing smile, her gaze sharp with intention. "Give her a choice, Jack," she said simply. "No matter what she decides, make sure you come out ahead." Her words lingered in the air between us, heavy with meaning. She reached across the table, her hand brushing against mine in a gesture of quiet support. Her smile carried a mix of encouragement and understanding. For the first time all day, I felt a faint glimmer of hope. After lunch, I returned to the office, throwing myself into work to avoid going home to Amanda. The idea of sitting across from her, pretending everything was fine, was more than I could handle. Later that evening, I stopped by the Indigo Lounge, a small, intimate bar where I could enjoy a few drinks and distract myself with familiar faces. It was nearly 10 p.m. when I finally walked back through my front door. Amanda was waiting for me, her frustration practically radiating from across the room. "You didn't even bother to call," she said sharply. "I went out of my way to make a nice dinner for us. It's sitting in the fridge. I was hoping we could spend some time together tonight, maybe try to reconnect. And now, I can smell the booze on you." "Yes, I had a few drinks," I admitted, my tone blunt. "I stayed out because I couldn't deal with this tonight. I needed a break. Amanda, a little time to forget about what you're planning to do tomorrow." Without waiting for her response, I turned and headed toward the guest room. "I'm tired. I'm going to bed." Her voice followed me down the hallway, steady but cold. "Don't worry, Jack. Tomorrow will come and go, and this will all be behind us. Things will go back to the way they were." I didn't bother answering. I just closed the door behind me, stripped down to my boxers, and collapsed onto the guest bed, exhaustion and frustration pressing down on me like a weight. The next morning I was up early. I downed a quick breakfast, just coffee and toast, and stepped outside to tackle some yard work. I mowed the lawn, pulled weeds, and tidied up the space. The physical effort helped quiet my mind, giving me something to focus on besides the gnawing ache in my chest. When I came back inside, sweaty and tired, Amanda was getting ready to leave. "I've got a spa appointment," she said, her tone casual, as though it were any other day. "Manicure, pedicure, the whole thing. I'll be back in a few hours." Leaning against the kitchen counter, I watched her for a moment. "Amanda," I said, my voice firm but quiet, "don't do this. It's not going to end the way you think it will." She paused briefly, as though considering my words, but then said nothing. She picked up her purse and walked out the door, leaving me alone again. By the time she returned that afternoon, it was clear she'd spared no effort getting ready. Her hair was swept up into an elegant style, her nails painted a vibrant red. She looked radiant, too radiant. It was obvious she'd been preparing for something significant. Meanwhile, I'd spent my day preparing in my own way. The living room had been transformed, the furniture rearranged, the rug rolled up to leave an open space in the center. When Amanda stepped into the room, she froze, her eyes scanning the changes. "What's all this?" she asked, crossing her arms. "Why's the rug rolled up? And what's with the furniture?" "I made space for dancing," I said, keeping my tone light. "Thought we could spend the evening together. Make it romantic." She raised an eyebrow, skepticism written all over her face. "What are you trying to do here, Jack?" "Nothing underhanded," I replied calmly. "I just want to show you that staying here tonight would be a better choice. Let me show you something." I gestured for her to follow me to the dining room. Reluctantly, she trailed behind. The table was set with meticulous care. Our best china, polished silverware, and crystal glasses. A bouquet of roses sat at the center, flanked by 2 tall candles, their soft glow casting a warm, intimate light over the room. It looked like something out of a 5-star restaurant. "Jack," she said slowly, her tone firm, "I see what you're trying to do, but it's not going to work. You know I already have plans for tonight." "I know exactly what your plans are," I said evenly. "But plans can change, Amanda. Sometimes, something better comes along." "Are you really going to disappoint me for him?" "Jack, don't do this to yourself," she said, shaking her head. Ignoring her dismissal, I led her to the kitchen, where dinner preparations were well underway. "Let me tell you what I've planned," I began. "We'll start with a chilled green gazpacho, topped with chopped yellow tomatoes and cucumber. Then a crisp salad of iceberg lettuce with avocado and bacon, dressed with ranch. To cleanse the palate, I've made a lime sorbet." "Jack, stop," she said softly, guilt creeping into her voice. "You're putting so much into this, but it's not going to change my decision." Undeterred, I continued. "The main course is a pork chop stuffed with rice and herbs, finished with béarnaise sauce. On the side, asparagus sautéed in garlic butter and creamy potato gratin. Dessert will be vanilla ice cream with green crème de menthe. And we'll wrap it up with coffee and a choice of liqueurs." Amanda sighed, her frustration mingled with guilt. "It sounds incredible, Jack, but I'm leaving tonight. I even bought a new dress for the occasion." With that, she turned and headed upstairs. I heard the shower running as I went to my own room to change. I opted for a pair of black slacks, a fitted shirt, and leather shoes. It wasn't formal, but it felt appropriate for the dinner I'd prepared. When Amanda came down the stairs, my heart sank. She looked breathtaking, and that only made it harder. Her black dress fit her like a glove, hugging her curves in all the right places. The neckline drew attention to her collarbone and shoulders, and the hemline, though modestly above her knees, had a daring slit that revealed just enough of her stockings as she walked. Her heels, with delicate straps studded with small diamonds, added an elegant finishing touch. "How do I look?" she asked, giving a little spin to show off the outfit. A knot of anger and frustration tightened in my chest, but I forced myself to stay composed. "You look incredible," I said, offering a strained smile. "Like you're trying to impress someone, but it's not me." She shrugged off my comment with a wave of her hand. "It's a special night, Jack," she replied. "I wanted to look my best. Don't worry, I'll wear this for you some other time." As she moved toward the door, I turned on the radio, mindlessly flipping through stations. George Michael's Careless Whisper began to play, a song that always hit me right in the emotions. I turned up the volume and let the familiar melody take over for a moment. "Can I have one last dance before you go?" I asked quietly. Amanda paused, hesitation flickering across her face. After a beat, she gave a small nod. "All right, just one." I crossed the room, gently took her hand, and pulled her into a slow, close embrace. We swayed together, our movements in rhythm with the music. Her perfume, soft and familiar, brought back a flood of memories, both sweet and painful. "You're wearing English leather," she murmured, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "I know it's your favorite," I replied, keeping my voice low. As the song reached its final notes, I leaned in, brushing soft kisses along her cheek and down her neck. She sighed, the sound almost instinctive, a reflex of comfort and familiarity. Emboldened, I let my hand slide to the strap of her dress, easing it gently off her shoulder. She froze, stepping back abruptly. "No, Jack, don't. You know I'm leaving tonight. We can do this some other time." I held her gaze, trying to steady my voice. "It's not too late to change your mind." Her expression hardened, the warmth from our dance gone. "I'm not changing my plans, Jack. I told you, I'm going on this date. Don't try to ruin it." Taking a deep breath, I stepped back, trying to rein in my emotions. "All right, I won't stop you. You've made your choice and I can see it's final. But before you walk out that door, there are two things I need you to do." Her eyes narrowed slightly with suspicion. "What things?" "First," I said, gesturing toward the dining room, "I want you to see what I've done. Look at the table I set for us tonight. I want you to remember it when you leave." I led her into the dining room, where I'd lit the candles and dimmed the lights. The table was set with our finest china, silverware, and crystal glasses. A bouquet of roses sat in the center, flanked by tall candles casting a warm glow over the scene. It was romantic, intimate, and exactly what our evening could have been. Amanda glanced at the setup, her expression unreadable. "We can have a romantic dinner another time, Jack." Ignoring the lump in my throat, I stepped closer and gently took her left hand. Slowly, I slid off her wedding and engagement rings. "Second, I don't want you wearing these when you're with him. These rings mean something, they symbolize us. And tonight, you're choosing to leave that behind." Her eyes widened slightly as I placed her rings, along with my own wedding band, on the small table in the hallway. For the first time, her confident exterior cracked, and I saw a flicker of guilt cross her face. "Okay," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. As Amanda reached for her shawl and clutch, the doorbell rang, startling us both. Through the frosted glass, a silhouette stood waiting. "Who could that be at this hour?" she muttered, heading for the door. When she opened it, her voice caught in surprise. "Emily? What are you doing here?" I stepped forward, taking Emily's hand and guiding her inside. Amanda's gaze darted to Emily's appearance, her usual office attire replaced with a scarlet cocktail dress that hugged her figure. The off-the-shoulder straps were tied with delicate bows, and French-style red stockings peeked out as she moved. Her hair was styled in a loose updo, accented with a ribbon that matched her dress perfectly. "Jack invited me," Emily said, her tone smooth as silk. Her eyes flicked to the dining table, the candlelight reflecting in them. "He promised me an evening of romance. Dinner by candlelight, a slow dance, and maybe cozying up by the fire. How could I possibly say no?" Amanda's expression shifted from shock to disbelief. "You look so different from how you dress at work." Emily smirked, adjusting the strap of her dress. "I like to dress up for special occasions, and you look stunning yourself. That dress will certainly make Stanley's night." Amanda froze, her face paling. "Stanley? How do you know about him?" Emily let out a soft, knowing laugh. "Oh, everyone in the office knows about Stanley, the paralegal team, the tax department. Stanley isn't exactly subtle." Amanda's cheeks flushed with embarrassment. "We tried to be discreet." "Discreet," Emily said with a raised eyebrow. "Shorter skirts, plunging necklines, extra makeup, and wearing his favorite perfume? You weren't fooling anyone." Amanda lowered her head, her voice barely audible. It wasn't supposed to go this far. I thought it would just be one night. I stepped forward, draped her shawl over her shoulders, and gently guided her toward the door. One night, huh? Fine. Go. But don't come back until tomorrow morning. I've given you every chance to stay with me, Amanda. You chose him. She hesitated, guilt and defiance battling on her face. I'll be back, she said quietly before stepping out onto the porch. Have fun tonight, I said as I closed the door behind her. For a long moment, I stood there in silence, listening to her car pull away. The weight of what had just happened pressed down on me, heavier than I'd expected. Nothing about this would ever be the same again. Emily stepped closer, her expression soft. I can't imagine how you feel right now, Jack, she said gently. But remember, no matter what choice Amanda makes, you've already won. She reached up, her hands cupping my face as she leaned in. Her kiss was soft at first, reassuring and kind, but it deepened quickly, her arms wrapping around me as I held her close. When we finally pulled apart, both of us were breathless. Emily smiled faintly. Let's not waste the night. Show me this dinner you've prepared. I led Emily into the kitchen, where the last touches of dinner awaited. Her presence felt like a balm, soothing the tension that had consumed me for weeks. She glanced around, taking in the aroma of the dishes I'd prepared, her smile warm and appreciative. You've really outdone yourself, Jack, she said, her eyes sparkling. Everything smells incredible. It's nothing extravagant, I replied modestly, though her words sparked a quiet pride inside me. How about a glass of wine while I finish things up? I'd love that, she said, leaning casually against the counter with a playful grin. I poured her a glass of chilled Chardonnay, and after taking a sip, she gave me a teasing smile. So, chef, what's my role tonight? Grinning, I handed her a cutting board and a knife. I need you to dice this avocado and toss it into the salad mix with the lettuce and bacon. Then give it a gentle stir with the dressing. Emily got to work with ease, her movements unhurried yet precise. Watching her chop and mix, I felt a surprising sense of calm settle over me. We chatted about light-hearted topics, steering clear of anything that might bring Brianna or the recent chaos into the conversation. The gentle rhythm of her work contrasted sharply with the whirlwind of emotions I'd been living in. As she finished the salad, I focused on plating the gazpacho. The chilled soup went into glass bowls, each topped with a garnish of diced tomatoes and cucumber. The table was already set with care, every detail crafted to create an atmosphere of intimacy. Emily carried the salad to the dining room and placed it at the center of the table. I followed with the gazpacho, pulling out her chair and helping her settle in before taking my seat at the head of the table. Before we began, I raised my glass, meeting her gaze. Here's to a night worth remembering, I said, my voice steady and sincere. To a night worth remembering, she echoed, clinking her glass lightly against mine. Dinner unfolded like a perfect melody. We savored every course, and Emily made it a point to compliment each dish, describing the meal as nothing short of 5-star. Her praise felt genuine, and her company turned what might have been a lonely evening into one filled with warmth and connection. By the time we reached dessert, a simple scoop of vanilla ice cream drizzled with crème de menthe, I realized how much lighter I felt. After the meal, Emily insisted on helping clean up. Side by side in the kitchen, we washed dishes and wiped down counters, her laughter filling the space like sunlight breaking through clouds. Her easy demeanor was infectious, her humor a welcome reprieve from the weight of the last few days. Once the kitchen sparkled, she suggested we move to the living room. I dimmed the lights, lit a few candles, and turned on soft music. The gentle sound of rain and faint rumbles of thunder played through the speakers, creating a soothing ambience. Emily stood near the fireplace, her figure bathed in its flickering glow. She swayed lightly to the music, her eyes closed as if lost in her own world. When I stepped closer, She opened her eyes and held out her hands, inviting me to join her. We moved slowly together, her body close to mine, the music guiding our steps. Her warmth, her touch, the softness in her gaze. It all felt natural, as though the world outside didn't exist. "This is perfect, Jack," she whispered. "I can't remember the last time I felt this connected." "I feel the same way," I admitted softly. We held each other in silence, letting the music wrap around us. Her breath brushed against my neck, her heartbeat faintly in sync with mine. I leaned down, brushing my lips against hers, the kiss gentle at first. It deepened naturally, her arms tightening around me as we lost ourselves in the moment. For the first time in weeks, I felt the tension in my chest start to unravel. When we finally broke apart, she smiled up at me, her cheeks faintly flushed. "Let me slip into something more comfortable," she said teasingly. "Feel free to do the same." She disappeared down the hall, leaving me to change in my room. I opted for a pair of black silk pajama pants and a matching shirt, simple, but with a touch of elegance. After pouring myself a small glass of Bailey's, I settled on the couch to wait. A few minutes later, I heard soft footsteps. Before I could turn around, I felt Emily's arms wrap around the back of the couch, her hands slipping under my shirt to rest against my chest. She kissed the side of my neck, sending a shiver down my spine. When I turned to face her, I couldn't help but stare. Emily stood there, wrapped in a black satin robe loosely tied at the waist. Beneath it, delicate lace hinted at the curve of her figure, hugging her in all the right places. Her hair was loose, framing her face, and her bare legs caught the soft glow of the firelight. I reached for her hand, guiding her over the back of the couch. She landed beside me with a soft laugh, her robe slipping slightly to reveal more of the lace beneath. I leaned in to kiss her again, this time with no hesitation. What started as a tender embrace quickly deepened, her lips parting as our connection intensified. My hands traced the curve of her back, slipping the robe off her shoulders to reveal her smooth, warm skin. She was breathtaking, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt truly confident in myself. We let the world fade away, surrendering to the closeness we both craved. Later, as the fire crackled softly in the background, we lay entwined on the couch. Emily rested her head on my chest, her fingers idly tracing patterns along my skin. The weight that had been suffocating me for weeks felt lighter, almost as if it had disappeared. "I don't know what tomorrow holds," I said quietly, my voice steady. "But I'm glad I had tonight." She tilted her head to look up at me, her eyes soft and sincere. "Me too, Jack," she replied. "Whatever happens next, you deserve happiness. Don't ever forget that." The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Sleep had escaped me, leaving only a heavy weight in my chest. Deep down, I already knew what needed to be done. There was no point in delaying the inevitable. I had made my decision. While Emily was still asleep, I got up quietly, not wanting to disturb her. I brewed a pot of coffee, poured myself a cup, and sat by the window in the kitchen, staring out at the faint light of dawn. The sun was beginning to peek through the clouds, but its warmth couldn't touch the cold certainty I felt inside. Today would be the day everything changed. A little while later, Emily emerged, still wrapped in the satin robe from the night before. Her hair was slightly tousled, and her smile was soft but curious. "Good morning," she said, her voice gentle. "Morning," I replied, offering her a cup of coffee as she joined me at the table. She took a sip, her eyes studying my face. "You look like you've got a lot on your mind," she said, her tone careful. I nodded, not bothering to mask the seriousness in my expression. "I do, Emily. I've made a decision." Her gaze didn't waver. "And what's that?" I exhaled deeply, setting my coffee mug down. "I'm leaving Amanda. I can't stay in that marriage anymore. Last night made me realize what I've been missing, what I deserve." And I don't want to wait a year or give her another chance to prove something she's already destroyed. Emily's lips parted in surprise, but she didn't interrupt. She simply waited for me to continue. I've been holding on to something that's already gone, I said, my voice steady but heavy with emotion. I've tried to justify staying, for the kids, for the years we've spent together, but it's not enough anymore. I don't trust her, and I can't forgive what she's done. I deserve to be happy. And Emily, I want that happiness with you. Her eyes softened, and she reached across the table, placing her hand over mine. Jack, are you sure about this? It's a big step. You don't have to decide everything right now. I shook my head firmly. I've never been more sure of anything. You've shown me what it's like to feel alive again, to feel valued. I don't want to waste any more time living in a broken marriage, pretending everything's okay. I need to move forward, and I want you to be part of that. Emily's smile was small but genuine. I'll be here for you, Jack. Whatever you need. After a quiet breakfast, I drove Emily home. The air between us filled with an unspoken understanding. She kissed me softly before stepping out of the car, her words lingering in my mind. Take care of yourself, Jack, and don't let anyone make you doubt this. When I returned home, Amanda's car was already parked in the garage. I walked in through the side door, catching the faint aroma of freshly brewed coffee lingering in the air. As I poured myself a cup, the weight of what I had to say settled over me, but my resolve remained firm. I entered the dining room to find Amanda seated at the table, her shoulders tense and her hands clasped tightly in front of her. Her face was pale, and her eyes were rimmed red, evidence of a sleepless night. I set my cup down and leaned casually against the doorway. How was your evening? I asked, my tone neutral but edged with a hint of irony. Fine, she replied curtly, though her voice was fragile. Her eyes flicked up to meet mine before darting away. And yours? It was exactly what I needed, I said, not bothering to soften my words. Emily reminded me what it feels like to be appreciated. She gave me clarity. I paused, letting the weight of my words settle before adding, and that's why I'm here to tell you. I'm filing for divorce. Her head snapped up, shock written across her face. What? No, Jack, you don't mean that. I do, I said firmly, pulling out a chair and sitting across from her. But before we get into that, why don't you tell me how your night went? Her lips trembled, and she avoided my gaze. Finally, she sighed deeply, her hands shaking as she clasped them tightly together. It was awful, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. The worst night of my life. I didn't reply, waiting for her to continue. The silence stretched, but eventually she spoke. When I got to the restaurant, Stanley was waiting for me, she began hesitantly. He looked so excited, so confident. I thought it would make me feel special, but instead, I just felt nervous. I started drinking almost immediately, trying to calm my nerves. By the time our food arrived, I'd had too much wine. I barely touched my meal. I couldn't eat. My stomach was in knots. She paused, her voice faltering. He suggested we head back to his place after dinner. I thought maybe if we danced, it would lighten the mood. But I was tipsy and clumsy, and he was growing frustrated with me. He tried to hide it, but I could tell. Amanda's hands clenched tighter, her knuckles white. When we went upstairs, I tried to push through the doubt, the guilt, the everything. He kissed me, and I let him. He started to undress me, and I didn't stop him. But as soon as it began, I realized how wrong it felt. There was no connection, no passion. I couldn't stop thinking about you and Emily, about what you were doing together. Her voice cracked, and tears streamed down her face. When it was over, he looked at me with disappointment, like I'd let him down. He said it was the worst experience of his life and asked me what was wrong with me. I couldn't even answer. He got dressed, muttered something about finding someone else at the bar, and left me there. I stayed in that bed, crying, until I fell asleep. Amanda buried her face in her hands, her sobs filling the room. When I woke up, it was morning, and the sun was shining. But I felt hollow, Jack. Completely empty. I showered, put on my clothes, and left the hotel as fast as I could. I wanted to come home and talk to you, but you weren't here. I was at brunch, I said plainly, with Emily, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like myself again. Amanda lifted her head, her eyes filled with regret. Jack, I'm so sorry. I was stupid, reckless, and selfish. I see now that Stanley didn't care about me, he just wanted to use me. I've destroyed everything we had. Please give me another chance. I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. Amanda, you made your choice. You spent months building something with him, even if it was just emotional at first. You planned that night, and when the time came, you went through with it. And now, because it didn't work out the way you wanted, you expect me to forgive you and pretend it never happened. She shook her head, her tears falling harder. I'll never do anything like this again. I swear, Jack. I'll spend the rest of my life proving that I can be the wife you deserve. Just don't leave me, please. I sighed, my voice cold and resolute. It's too late, Amanda. This marriage is over. I can't forgive you for what you've done, and honestly, I don't want to. You betrayed me in a way I can't come back from. Her sobs grew louder as the reality of my words hit her, but I didn't waver. I'm moving on with Emily. She's shown me what it feels like to be valued, to be seen. I'm not going to waste another moment in a marriage that's been dead for years. I'll stay at a hotel for now, but you'll hear from my lawyer soon. Without waiting for her response, I stood up and left the room. As I walked out the door and into the fresh morning air, I felt the first glimmer of freedom. For the first time in a long time, I was ready to start over, and this time I wasn't looking back.